First up, today we're going to talk about the Microsoft for Startups Founders Hub program. Now, before we jump into some of this topic, there might be something you might be wondering. What exactly is Founders Hub and what pain point does it address? Traditionally speaking, a lot of startups have struggled with access to resources to build and scale at the required amounts that they're pursuing and their goals. Founders Hub, simply put, is a program that holistically enables entrepreneurs at various levels of their tech startup's journey to build and across different geographies. So, for instance, you could be a founder sitting over here in the Middle East, you could be based out of Europe or somewhere else in the world, and you will still be eligible to apply for this program to take your startup to the next level. But I figured it's interesting to have some familiar faces as well who know the Founders Hub program as well to join us and talk about it a bit more. For that, I would love to bring on board my wonderful colleagues Noor Salama and Sania Kaddoura to have a discussion on this topic.
Hey.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for having us, Asad.
It's an absolute pleasure. And there's no one else I would rather have to discuss this very interesting topic to see how we can help people out there learn a bit more about Founders Hub. So, intros aside, you guys probably know the gist of it. Now, we know a rough idea as to what the program is, and the people out there know it. But now you might be wondering, what does it offer to the startups? Like, what do they get in terms of the benefits from this? So, it's quite a 360 journey if we think about it. On the one hand, we obviously enable them to have Azure credits to build their startup, because without the Azure credits, it'd be very strange for them to go about building their website or their tech offering. On the Azure credit front, so there's 4 tiers to this for the people out there and who are new to learning about this. On the first tier, you get access to $1,000 of credits for Azure, and this goes all the way up to the 4th tier, where you would be eligible to have $120,000 of Azure credits. So that enables you to have a total of Azure credits of up to $151,000, which is a pretty good starting point for any startup that's looking to grow from its nascent stages to a more developed stage.
So that's
What's
for
more,
around maybe 4 years, right?
yes, I believe that is for around 4 years. And to add to the mix, we also offer a few other things to go as part of the Founders Hub benefits. So you would have access as a startup and licenses to Office 365 and Teams to enable you to get the most out of those productivity tools. You would also have access to, and Sanya, I'm sure you would be more keen on this one, the tech side of things, which is access to GitHub and Power BI and Microsoft Dynamics, which I'm sure all the other tech founders out there would also be very keen to have access to and use to grow their ventures. Now, you might
So
be wondering, go ahead.
what makes level 3 and 4 very special? So let's if you want to look at it from that perspective, what makes level 3 and 4 very special for us?
Level 3 and level 4. Now, that's obviously once we get to the part where a company, we've grown past the stages where, okay, we know that they definitely have a lot of potential. If they've managed to consume that much, if they pass the first and second level of Azure consumption, we know that they're going to continue to build even further and
So they're
grow
going to need
stronger. They're going to
Yes,
need more Azure credits.
perfect, exactly. Which means that they're going to need mentorship and they're going to get technical advisory, making them the 2 tiers that you really love to work with and focus on, in addition to our early startups that we usually help with when they're building.
Exactly. And it's interesting that you mention the mentorship sessions as well as the workshops, because that is also something that founders who join Founders Hub can get access to. So we understand, okay, from a technical perspective, it's great to have the tools, but maybe you need something a bit more to go to elaborate on your knowledge or to address certain pain points you might be experiencing. To that effect, you can reach, if through the Founders Hub platform, you're able to reach out for one-to-one sessions with different mentors who can address different topics. So let's say if I'm a tech startup and I want to learn about go-to-market strategy, or let's say Sania and Noor, you have a startup and you'd like to learn about user acquisition. All that falls under that umbrella, and you're able to seek out expert opinions on how to address those areas. And you also get, if you want something that's a bit more broader, so you have access to different events and workshops, which are also run through Founders Hub to address these different topics. What's more, there's the technical support as well, which you pointed out earlier. So let's say a startup is having some issues or they are a bit confused about the certain technical aspects, they're able to also reach out and address those.
Yeah, I think a really good way to think about it, and Sania and I do this a lot, is asking the question of what problem does this solve for the startup, right? I think it's fair to say that sometimes Microsoft for Startups programs might not be as straightforward to our entrepreneurs as we try and make them. And so for us, it's very important to, I mean, it's great for startups to have licenses and so on and so forth, but what does that actually do for them, right? And the way that Sanya and I look at it, anyone who's spoken to us knows that we're very much two sides of the same bickering coin, right? You have startups who are building and you have startups who are scaling, right? So you have people who are getting anywhere from $1,000 in credits to anywhere to $120,000 in credits, which is the 151 cumulative. Those startups at different parts of the journey need different things. And we've also, beyond splitting it out from sort of build and scale, we split it out from a commercial acceleration to a technical acceleration. And that's sort of how Sanya and I support separately. So obviously I do the technical and Sanya does the commercial, as everybody knows.
Obviously.
Obviously.
Okay, so before we jump into the details of that, and obviously we have no idea what we're doing right here, right? Um, uh, Asad, can you tell us who can apply for the for Founders Hub?
That's a very good question. So, and that definitely helps a lot of people in the audience personify if they fall into that category and if they're eligible for the program. So, as a very beginning reference point, we're looking at startups that are obviously looking to develop on Azure, because why would they use the Azure credits otherwise, for the development of their own software or platforms. And in terms of their profile, these are for profit ventures and they have outright ownership of the software that they're working on. Now, some people on this chat might be thinking traditionally the program was only applicable for B2B startups. Now we've opened this up to a more broader range to invite applications, not just from B2B specific companies. And in terms of the development stages, we're looking at companies all the way ranging from pre seed to Series C in terms of the segment that we're looking to target. Unfortunately, though, at this time, Founders Hub is not open for some of the different types of companies. So we're thinking of educational institutes such as the universities, personal blogs, maybe you're a Bitcoin or crypto mining startup, or you're a government venture. So unfortunately, they would not be able to apply to Founders Hub. And another point that stands here is if you've been an alumni of a previous Microsoft for Startups program, then you would not be able to join Founders Hub. So that's an overview of the people who would be non-eligible as well as the one who are eligible to join the program.
Thank you. That's very insightful. Like hearing you put it in that way is like very clarifying. I hope that everyone who's tuning in was able to get all that. And I'm positive that Asad would be more than happy to respond to people asking about those later on by email or by direct contact on LinkedIn. So moving the Founders Hub discussion a bit separately, um, Noor and I basically, would you like to switch roles again? So, shall we talk about our in-program experience when it comes to
Yes.
tech and non-tech aspects?
Yes.
Okay, shall I start with the I'm gonna loosely say tech, but I'm gonna say tech selling. How about this?
Yes. I like that.
Yes. So if I want to say I'm a startup and I want to sell on Azure. I want to utilize all the Microsoft for Startup resources that include Founders Hub as well as the regional, let's say, regionalized aspect of our program. So how do I usually sell? I would basically need access to corporates. I would combine that with marketplace. I'll explain that in a bit, as well as co-sell. I would need to understand the Microsoft channel and understand whether I want to be a Microsoft partner going forward. So starting with this, let's start with the biggest concept of ours. And this is something that startups, when they join, would usually not have a great understanding of. We've made it a point to make sure that startups that are part of our program understand what Microsoft Azure Marketplace is. So similar to what you would expect from an online marketplace, our commercial marketplace is a place where startups in this situation, so publishers and buyers, meet to trade, right? The only people who are allowed on this marketplace are Microsoft partners, which is why it's the Microsoft Azure Marketplace. Now, um, for those who are asking what a Microsoft partnership is, it's an online agreement. It's something very straightforward. You sign it, and it defines you as a commercial entity. It results in getting an identification number so that we can identify you uniquely. And you need to identify whether you wish to sell a product or sell a service. In that situation, if you're a startup, you're selling a product. Now, the same agreement makes you eligible for a lot of services and resources like online templates, marketing collateral, billing support, licensing information, all to empower you to become a Microsoft partner. This is also where you would receive referrals in case you are eligible for referrals from buyers. Your buyers in that situation, so it's a marketplace. We discussed the sellers, let's talk about the buyers. The buyers are either direct customers or leads from Microsoft agents or other Microsoft channel businesses who are capable of transacting. And that means that they are on the marketplace as well as customers or partners. Now, your offering would have to be either a combination of Azure Marketplace, so it has to be published on Azure Marketplace or AppSource, and or a combination of both. So, in summary, a commercial marketplace, our commercial marketplace, is a platform where you can engage customers and channel partners. You can leverage Microsoft field resources, and you can put up your prices for shoppers to drive deals with those customers. Now, that is basically the marketplace aspect of
Sania,
things.
who can
Yes.
who can list and transact on marketplace?
Basically Microsoft partners. The only people who can list are people who have signed a Microsoft partnership agreement and have a publication of the service or offering that they are selling.
Are there any sort of restrictions on B2B, B2C, maturity?
No, no, like not really in theory, but in practice, depending on your type of publication, a thorough check or a level of fact checking happens. So let's say if you are publishing your solution on marketplace, you need to share certain collaterals like bills of material. Your solution needs to be hosted on Azure. You're asked for your let's say your selling model. A set of criteria is shared with you when you're publishing. Requirements would be shared with you, and you need to present those when depending on the type of publication you're using.
Nice. Thank you.
Happy
Nice.
to. Shall we talk about the co-sell, or do we switch to a more, let's say, non-tech selling topic before we go
I
back to
think
marketplace?
I think we could switch the ball up a little bit. So maybe we could go into perhaps talking about how, if you're a startup on the program and you're interested in hiring talent, or let's say you want to learn a little bit more about fundraising and the investor access. So what would that look like from what you guys have seen?
Amazing. So if we can just take one step back, we do what we do. So Microsoft for Startups has this awesome global Founders Hub program. That program is available for startups everywhere. But as any startup that is based anywhere in any kind of region will tell you, there is regional and local specific support, i.e., mentors who are in your ecosystem, talent that is physically available, where you live, sort of regional and local considerations that help accelerate you in ways that maybe a global program won't be able to, despite offering a huge abundance of support in other ways. So that is a huge part of what being in the Microsoft for Startups program, either in Middle East, Pakistan, or Turkey, which is the region that we look after. We have very much built out multiple solutions for different pain points that startups who are in our program will have. As said, you highlighted talent, fundraising, needing mentorship, whether that is technical, so Sania's domain very much, or whether it is commercial. There's also linking them up to potential buyers, so helping them really increase revenue, right? Like that's what we're really trying to do with our companies. And so for every pain point that we've mapped, and I really invite the audience to share the pain points that they have in case we haven't covered them. We've tried to be very thorough, but I mean, obviously things will drop. So for example, startups need talent, okay? They need two kinds of talent. They need technical talent and they need commercial, non-technical talent. We partner with different kinds of entities. For example, like the IFC here, who had a talent week. And that acts as a marketplace. So they sort of recruit talent. We match that talent with open roles that are in our in-program companies. We also have a community where people can ask for referrals, right? Our internal sort of teams community, where if you're looking for technical talents, you can ask other founders. Sania, I'll leave the next one to you, but sometimes you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Somebody has done something before, somebody has fixed a problem that you are currently facing, and you don't want to start from scratch, right? So we have dedicated solutions for that Sania is going to talk about a little bit more.
Okay. So we do have, so we really leverage teams in this situation. It's the core part of not just our identity, but the products that we use to make sure that whatever a startup founder has faced so far is not something, if possible, another startup would have to face. And that means that we try and make sure we keep our community alive with posts about problems and solutions that they might face, perks and opportunities, announcements when it comes to changes within our program. So let's say our graduation process is changing and we're getting a lot of questions about what graduation is and the conversion from the Microsoft for Startups to Founders Hub. And that's where being active on our Teams community comes in, because we publicize a post and we share a step-by-step guide, sometimes recordings of things that can make a startup founder's life a lot more easier. In some situations, a founder would be stumped. He had have a particular need, and he would not know whom to talk to, right? And our, let's say, our walls are and our feed is quite active with those kinds of questions. Aside from that, we do have open channels for communication when it comes to support, when it comes to sharing technical
Yeah.
insight, when it comes to like asking for features, and
Like this
our
one, right?
founders are
It's
quite
Ask Me
active. Yeah.
Anything. Yeah.
Yes, it's pretty much an ask me anything. We try make sure those stay in the FAQ support page, but we end up with a lot of them on the general page at some times. But that does not mean we do not try make sure that they're all resolved.
Ultimately, I think we see our role, particularly in the regional context, as matchmaking, right? But as much as possible, we're trying to connect our in-program startups with the resources that make most sense to them. So, like, for example, one of the initiatives that we're very, very proud of is our solution manual. We have a bunch of incredible startups in our program. A lot of them are B2B. A lot of them are sort of early stage to scale up, and they are looking for corporate clients. They're looking to expand their scope, right? So we have a mechanism for startups that want to pitch to that want to pitch to corporates, to be able to tell us what their solution is, so that we can then work with our internal Microsoft stakeholders, corporate leads, etc. This is real life. I'm really sorry, you guys. Sania is
No
going to take
problem.
over just
I
for
can
It's
take
it's
over in that
it's
situation.
we're very familiar with the travails of working from home. So I think we've been in it for 2 years, so this is very
Okay.
commonplace. But
And
yeah,
thank you, Ahmed, for pitching in and for saving us from the awkwardness of a doorbell. And lucky it's her doorbell. For me, it was my cat last time. But for like we try. So our core is making sure what the biggest pain points are, understanding the biggest pain points of our startups. And this region, the biggest pain point is basically customer acquisition. So we solve corporate access, for example, by creating programs like the Growthx, where we connect a potential corporate, a corporate with that has a challenge with a potential startup that can solve it. So that's basically our corporate side. We introduce startups to partnership and basically to make being a Microsoft partner, to channel business and introduce them to a marketplace and go sell when they want to sell either online or in channel. But at the same time, at times we have an amazing set of startups that have solutions that need to be highlighted because they're unique in the market, because they tackle a particular need. And this is where our solution manual comes in. Our solution manual is pretty much what the title is. It's a manual that has an aggregation of the mature solutions that our startups have been creating over the past year. So we'll be launching it with the end of this month, and this basically highlights the solution part of the startup rather than the startup itself, its founders, and its
Yeah.
funding. It highlights the segments that's covering, the problem that it's trying to solve, as well as certain aspects like, is it a female founder startup? Does it focus on sustainability? Does it focus on inclusivity? I hear Noor. You're
Yeah,
back.
so I was gonna say it's about, so in case anyone was wondering, I saw some comments. It was cake. It's my husband's birthday today. I left them a note. They didn't listen. They rang the doorbell twice. The other thing is that on our solution manual and the other initiatives, it's about, so a startup is a really cool entity, but you have to speak the language of the different stakeholders, right? A corporate that is looking for a startup that can solve a particular challenge, as our amazing colleagues will talk about after this session, doesn't necessarily need to know the same things that an investor needs to know, doesn't need to know the same things that a regulator needs to know. We had a great session yesterday about pitching to regulators that's available for recording. So what we try and do, if you really wanted to summarize it, is take the information that we know the corporate, the talent, the whoever is looking for, and work with the startup to put together that little message, right? So that we can make sure that we're facilitating these value add connections wherever we can.
Completely agree.
So we have a couple of questions from the audience, right? Sania, I think you would be best suited for this one. Is
Okay.
how do we work with corporates to solve corporate problems with the startups?
So we have two ways that we do that. I touched upon them earlier. I'll be bringing down into more detail. So the first one is that they would be part of an existing accelerator. So the corporate would come in and tell us, can we be part of cohort 3, for example? And we have this particular challenge that we don't just want to mine for, but we also want to be able to like agree on a solution, converge on a solution with the startup. So work with that startup to get to that particular solution pain point. The other option is basically our solution manual. So because we focus on that solution, we're highlighting that aspect. So if a startup of ours has a need, the corporate either hear about that opportunity from an account manager or someone who's affiliated or owns the account, and we basically are suggesting a couple of startups that might be tackling it, or we actively go into the community in Microsoft and ask, is anyone looking for this particular for this solution? We have this amazing startup that does it, and if you have a bunch of other challenges, take a look at our solution manual. It basically shows a lot of other options that you might have
Yeah.
not thought of.
And we see a lot of inbound, right? There are a lot of corporates, large scale enterprises that want to work with startups, particularly in the region, but they don't know how or where to look, right? So we just try and bridge that gap either in our in-program experience or in Growthx, which our colleagues will talk to you about more in depth.
Exactly. And it's interesting because we internally have also had discussions about this at certain times. Sania and Noor, maybe you can also chip in on this one. Is there a link between the Founders Hub and GrowthX programs? Because there seems to be a thing where you need one to get into the other. So maybe you guys could touch upon that.
Do you want to take this, Noor?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Growthx, our colleagues will definitely talk more about it, but it requires startups to be enrolled in Founders Hub because the accelerator is about building on Microsoft technology, scaling with Microsoft. We require startups to be part of Founders Hub, to be already enrolled, so that we can select them for the program.
So in short, we really use the Azure and the Teams option whenever as part of our cohort. And that means that we need the startups to be utilizing that from their benefit.
Yeah. The other thing is something that I just saw in the chat, and it's something that I really want to highlight because it's a program that we're so proud of, is our mentorship program. So we have about 200 active mentors. About 110 of them are actually internal Microsoft people who will help startup founders navigate Microsoft, whether from a tech selling perspective or from a technical infrastructure perspective. Think security, think optimization, or from a like, hey, this is how you speak to a client, this is how you put together an SLA, this is how you can up your sort of maturity from a scorecard perspective when the corporates are coming to look at you, right? We try and facilitate that, but also we try and enable the startups to do that themselves, empower them to achieve the objectives that they want. And we are super proud of the mentors that we have who care enough about entrepreneurship and care enough about founders and the region to constantly volunteer their time. Some of them are volunteering, like 10 hours a week. No, 10 hours a month. That is, yeah, more accurate. 10 hours a month to work with our founders. And that's really, is that it takes a community. It takes a village to build a startup and make it successful and make it scalable. And that's what we try and do, is bringing everyone together to work towards one common objective.
100%. And it's like you say, it comes all full tilt. You can't have it just one facet and then another one going in another way. It needs to all come together. It's interesting. You mentioned upskilling and, putting startups in a position where they're able to stand on their own feet. From a learning perspective, so we've talked about mentorship, we've talked about the workshops. Is there anything else that they could get from a learning perspective that they can take and implement into their startups via Founders Hub?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good question. So from Founders Hub, I think you touched upon it earlier that usually only startups that are level 3 and 4 would get access to technical advisory. All startups do get access to webinars and workshops that have that whenever they're available. But we kind of try augment the Founders Hub bit with what we do here from a regional perspective, right? So as part of our program, we to collaborate with the local Microsoft entities. So we kind of hear about if there is, let's say, a DevThrill event, or if there's the Reactor event that's happening in Abu Dhabi, or whenever there's an opportunity for, let's say, a training session with a free certification. So we try publicize that and share that with our community, knowing that sometimes before you build, you'd have a lot of questions. So having a healthy foundation, or having someone to like drop a technical question at, is really useful. Now, keeping in mind that from a mentorship perspective, our startups in this region are capable of connecting with technical mentors, but we try make sure that they have several, let's say, several ways to get their assistance.
Yeah. Just to close this off, because we have one more question, and I don't want us to run into the time of Laura and Roberto. The long and the short of it is that we try really, really hard to build systems that support entrepreneurs in the region, right? As part of our in-program experience, or as part of Growthx and our other initiatives. We just have one more question from the audience. A product not using Microsoft technology but wants to leverage the Microsoft network in MENA, is this something we can assist with? No, we support startups who are in our program, and we encourage, because our program is really open, so we really encourage all startups to apply to Founders Hub if you're not there already. On a global level, it's a fantastic program, and on a regional level, we work really hard to make it a great regional program. And now we can hand over to our amazing colleagues, I think.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies. It's been very fun to do this and have a walk through all of Founders Hub with both of you. And I believe, Noor, you have some cake to go and enjoy, perhaps in a bit later.
Oh, yeah. So I have to wait for my husband for that cake, unfortunately. I can't eat it by myself.
Gratification is sometimes good.
And so one person is just asking, how can I be part of the program? We can pull up the link. I'm going to get you the link and share it in the chat. Great to see you all. Thank you, audience. Sorry for the interruption.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.